So today I'm showing you how to make some authentic homemade Mexican chorizo. And the reason is I need it for a recipe for the next recipe coming up. Our stores carry Spanish chorizo, which is a cured sausage. I mean, you can just slice it and eat it. You don't have to cook it. Whereas Mexican chorizo is a spicy, crumbly, like a ground meat that has to be cooked before eating. The two are not interchangeable. So I don't have Mexican chorizo here. I'm showing you how to make it yourself. Okay, so you're going to need 500 grams, which is about 1.1 pound of ground pork. Now there's a fair few spices in here, and it's a mix of whole and ground. You can use whatever you have on hand. So for instance, it calls for a tablespoon of cumin seed. I've only got ground, so I'm going to use 1.25 tablespoon. A teaspoon of coriander seed, or 1.25 teaspoons if you have ground. 5 whole cloves, that'd be about 3/8 teaspoon if it's ground. 2 bay leaves. If you have it crushed already, it's about 1/2 teaspoon. And then we need 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, 1 tablespoon of granulated garlic, and then we've got a teaspoon of sea salt and 5 whole peppercorns. Now you can use a teaspoon ground salt and about 1/2 teaspoon of ground pepper if that's what you've got. Now you're also going to need 2 tablespoons of Ancho chili powder, if you have that available. I don't, so there's a couple of substitutes you can use. 2 tablespoons of paprika, and then you can mix it with either 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper or 1 teaspoon of standard red Mexican chili powder. Lastly, you need 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. You can substitute that with red wine vinegar if that's what you've got on hand. So to start, any of the spices that you have that are whole need to be ground first. So you can do that with a mortar and pestle. I haven't got a proper mortar. I do have the pestle part. If you have that, you can do it by hand. Or you can use a coffee grinder or spice grinder, which is what I'm going to use today. Okay, so I've already ground all of my whole spices, and they're here in the bowl. Now we're just going to mix in the ones I have that are already ground. Okay, so I've got all the seasonings there, and I'm just going to mix those together well. You can see that's very well blended. Now it does say in a large glass bowl to start mixing it. I don't have a glass bowl. I have this ceramic one that I'm going to use. So if your pork is very thick and chunky, you'll want to break it up a little bit by hand first. Mine's quite finely ground, so I'm not too worried about that. So to start with, we're going to add the apple cider vinegar. 1, 2, 3. And you want to mix in about half the spices first. Now, if you are using the actual Ancho chili powder, a warning that the chili can actually burn your hands a bit, so you might want to put some gloves on to mix it in. If you haven't got any, like I don't, you can just use a plastic bag like this over your hand and just start mixing that in. Get it very well incorporated into the meat. I don't want to overwork it too much, and that's pretty well incorporated, so now I'm just going to add the rest of the seasonings and continue. So you can see how much darker the meat has become now from the spices, and mostly the chili and paprika in my case. So that's pretty well blended. It's best to leave it sit overnight in the fridge before you use it, just so all the flavors mingle properly, but it's not necessary. If you need to use it right away, you certainly can. I'm going to use this in my next video that requires Mexican chorizo.